back in 1999, while the arcade scene was still desperately clinging to its life. Midway launched a very peculiar arcade game called Hydro Thunder. From the Thunder series of racing games, this one is a speedboat racer. It's a very simple game. You pick a boat from a varied selection of speedboats, you pick a racetrack, and then you race against your rivals in order to snag first place. A very simple game, yet it's very fondly remembered, especially by me. I could talk about hours about how much I love that game, but that's the best way for you to understand just how cool it is to play it yourself. I left a link for the PC version down in the description for you to try. It's completely free, so don't worry about that. What I actually wanted to show you today is a slightly insane project I have been grinding on since January. I've tried getting a brand new racing game off the ground, but after realizing how catastrophically complex that was getting, I figured remaking the very game that inspired would be a fantastic way to get my abilities into the right place. So I decided to build a prototype of Hydro Thunder directly into Godot and share the results with you guys today. Now, this isn't a tutorial per se, it's more of a devlog where I rant about the technical errors that I stumbled into and how I magically managed to solve them. Now, if you somehow don't know what Godot is, it's a popular game engine for making 2D and 3D games across platforms. It's incredibly powerful and it's completely free. No scummy monetization models, no bloated installations, no horrible UI elements, no Chinese documentation. So why I chose to make a prototype of Hydro Thunder specifically? Well, boat racers aren't exactly setting the market on fire these days. I feel profoundly bored with the idea of making yet another kart racer. There's already millions of there, and my personal idea of a fast, fun racing game certainly isn't limited to wheeled vehicles glued to the dirt. So boats is what I chose in the end. Now, on the negative side, racers do have a substantially fewer reasons for me to work on. The heavy lifting in this project relied heavily on the Godot documentation, which is great by the way, a scouring obscure add-ons from other developers, which are also great, and watching a few videos about water physics. And yeah, I did ask some questions to AI, but hey, come on, look. I know, AI bad, but when you're paper thin for resources, you have to use what you have available. You won't see any generative AI implemented in the final version. All of it was just used for early coding and such. Now, I wouldn't recommend anyone to do this if you're just starting up in Godot or in any game engine. Tackling water is hard, very hard. I originally made 3 iterations for the project. The first iteration was focusing on functionality. It's very ugly. This disaster consists of a sad triangle boat and a single CSG torus serving as the entire racetrack, and a flat blue panel of water. And you see the triangle float clustered a bunch of primitive shapes together. Yes, I know, it looks like a spaceship. Don't look at me like that, I'm a programmer, not a 3D modeler. As for the map, I used 2 giant CSG toruses awkwardly smashed together to serve as the racetrack. The water's the worst one. It's just a blue panel. It sits there, it does nothing. Look, I get it, looks horrible. My sole goal here was just to get that damn boat to move, so I kept my focus on that. I added a script to the boat and cook up some basic movement logic. By adding simple code that changed the position and rotation based on player input, I successfully got the boat to go literally in every direction except left. For some baffling reason, pressing left would aggressively force the boat to go backwards. Why? Because from a top-down view, the controller was hard-coded to rotate on an invisible axis to go right. To go left, I lazily inverted the exact same parameter, believing it would work like this. In reality, the boat did this. So now we have a racing boat that refuses to go left. This also drives significantly faster if it goes backwards, which is not a feature, and I think I have seen that before. Now, the second iteration. This one was focused mostly on the track design. I pivoted hard to focus on the track first, using as a solid foundation for the boat to actually behave. Now, this scene isn't exactly winning any art awards, but it certainly looks better. I slapped together more CSG shapes to mold the world. Then I activated the colliders to stop the boat from entering the void of the outer world. And Using mostly basic boxes, I sculpted the rather peculiar blocky racetrack. As for the water, I've been watched a few tutorials how to make the water look like actual water. Massive shout out to Stay at Home Dev for his Godot water tutorial. I was able to generate a decent mesh and a really good looking shader for the water. I popped it into the scene and I added a collision so that the boat could not fall to the level. Now, regarding our boat, I reused the exact same model as before, but this time I retouched the script. Instead of just magically changing the axis, I directly commanded the boat to use the move toward function and analog switching. Suddenly, now the boat has weight. It feels like the hull is forcibly pushing against the water to carve out those turns. Now for a little extra, the start menu. Those are simple. Their complexity relies on what I did behind the scenes. I created a web of signals connecting all of them. This will allow me to activate certain parameters when various objects or conditions are met. For example, the boat should not move before the race starts. So I've drafted a function to completely freeze the physics until the countdown slams into 0. Now we're finally starting to feel like Hydro Thunder. The controls have been beautifully softened with the classic arcade direction switching. I hooked up the head start counter and finished the line timer. Sure, they are simple to implement, but they add this authentic racing feel that I feel I couldn't be more proud of. I even somehow managed to get the game to save my best times directly into my documents folder. Would you look at that? A fully functional saving system. It's getting to the point where I was happy, but visually the game still looked like shit. The boat was just there, standing like a floating white Dorito. The UI screens were a crime against graphic design. I initially just wanted to present this version and just call it a day, but it was completely unpresentable. It's functional, yes, but not something I will slap my name on. I needed to make a brand new revision. This time, we were focusing firstly on the visuals first. Now, before that, a good friend of mine, Lelu, check his Godot tutorials in the description, great guy, great tutorials, sat me down and showed me the nightmare of what it is to get water to be transparent and reflective at the same time. You see, it's not as simple. We tried using multiple methods, but we really couldn't achieve something we were happy with. Diving into research again, I stumbled upon an insanely good project by game design stuff, also linked in the description. This man managed to code a water shader that perfectly implements both transparency and real-time reflections inside a dynamic mesh, and man, it looks gorgeous. Massive shoutouts to him. Seriously, if it wasn't for his wizardry, I wouldn't be able to make this final revision. Link to his project in the description. Now, after experimenting with his shiny new water, I decided to build the entire revision directly inside his project, combining my previous mechanics that I made for the previous 2 versions into this one to get a hold of that water for a clean looking prototype. Now the water, I really wanted the surface to mimic that classic Hydro Thunder feel. A weird perfect mix between the hyper-transparent Hurricane sequel and the more opaque original. The waves kept their chunky low poly geometry to stop my GPU from catching fire. Now you might be asking, how did he achieve both transparency and reflections? Well, that was achieved by eliminating the metallic slider. Yes, metallic was completely rendered useless. You slide that thing to the max, nothing happens. There might be some arcane way of getting metallic rendering back, but since Hydro Thunder didn't even use metallic reflections in either version, we just got rid of it. As to why metallic specifically had to go, I tried to research about it. I tried to rework the script in the scene. I looked into the project settings. I looked at the inspector. I just could not figure out why it was disabled and how the reflections were bypassing it. If any of you wizards out there know the circuit, please enlighten me in the comments below. Moving on, I aggressively cranked up the water modifiers to make the waves much more pronounced. Then I slapped this specific chunk of code to finally get buoyancy working. This script essentially tracks the exact height of the water mesh in comparison with the boat's global Y position, and it violently forces the boat upward, where the wave smacks into the hull, creating the lovely boating effect. Huge thanks to craigz versus Game Dev. Now this version of the track is completely different. I plotted it on using a Pad3D node, and I wrapped a CSG mesh over it and enabled collisions. You see, I planned for the track to be a standard circular racetrack, But I realized that path is way too thin for the boat to actually turn. So why don't we just use the inner area of the spline as the track, rather than the lines themselves? This perfectly fits High the Thunder, where the tracks are widely variable in width and almost never look back to the start. As for the background, those majestic mountains are purely there just for the vibe. You will clip right through them if you touch them. I wasn't able to get collisions on them to work. I also added a giant ramp. This one has collisions, and I cannot have a High the Thunder game without a ramp. Now, to test the physics, I tossed some rigid body spheres into the water, and they looked okay. They bounce, they float, but they immediately snap into the Y0 axis and completely freeze, violating the laws of thermodynamics. Finally, the boat. Now, this gorgeous piece of geometry is a 3D mesh I casually stole from the internet. Huge shadows to this guy. It is infinitely prettier than the cursed white Dorito spaceship thing I made before. Now, I actually prototyped 3 completely different versions of this boat. One that is a character body 3D node, a standard rigid body 3D node, and a highly custom floatable rigid body. The first one, I was very disappointed because of how stiff and lifeless it was floating. So logically, I assumed the physics-based rigid body would work better, like craigz did his tutorial, again link in the description. That also failed spectacularly. It still behaved the same as the character body, so I hunted down an add-on to save me. I stumbled into this floatable body plugin in the Godot asset library. I tried that, and bottom line, didn't like it. After retooling a bit of the repositioning map in my water script, I switched it back to the character body, which was the best one in movement. Sure, the boat still refuses to tilt dramatically from side to side, but it reliably bobs up and down, which is much better for what I could do with the broken physics of the other one. Now, the camera. For the previous iterations, the camera was just stuck as a child of the boats that didn't feel like an arcade camera at all, so I created a whole dedicated script. Now, the camera dynamically pulls back. It features a buttery smooth follow delay. I also threw in a dampener so you don't get any violent motions. Yeah, that's basically it. After all that work, we finally have this. Now, while I'm incredibly happy with the results, there's still a massive list of features. I wanted to add softer waves, tweakable camera sliders, and actual water ripples that come from the boat. But honestly, I think it's fine. Cut the core right here. I will drop the GitHub repo in the description so you can dissect everything in this video for yourself. Also, I will be leaving links to the collaborators who made this project possible. Subscribe to the YouTube channels, donate to them. Thanks to you for sitting through this whole thing. Now, let's check my notes. Fresh hell is in store for me for the next video. Sky Swimming episode 2. Alright, see you in the next one.